I walked into a post office the other day to buy a sheet of stamps, expecting 50 American eagles or 50 American flags, the sort of thing you get when you buy a sheet of stamps. But what I was handed was 50 joyous little masterpieces, gummed miniatures of all the state birds and flowers, so bright and appealing that I hated to see them marred by anything so ordinary as a postmark. It turns out that they are the work of a father and son, Arthur Singer, a noted painter of birds, and his son Alan, who knows his flowers. We found Arthur Singer in New York supervising an installation of all his major paintings with the encouragement of his sons.
Oh yeah, leave that there. That's beautiful.
I think everything else.
Don't worry, I'm excited. I think
I'm looking forward to it, in a way. Everybody's apprehensive about something.
See you later, Frank? Yeah. We'll see you later. Good.
The fans and friends who came to the gallery were there to admire the giant oils and watercolors, of course, but the conversation kept coming back to those little stamps.
You don't have the whole 50. You're missing a row.
Well, I know, because I used a couple today.
Well, you can't really sign it, although...
Well, you can sign on top of some of these because they're duplicated.
No, they're not duplicated.
What?
There is no...
Well,
there's
the
no two
pictures are
that
not duplicated, but the birds are duplicated.
Yes.
Each of the 50 stamps is a precise double portrait. Altogether, the states united. The first day ceremony for the stamps was held in Washington with a fanfare for the singers and their stamps. 2 singers, 426 million stamps. No artists have ever had such bestsellers.
To do 50 kind of excited me. It was a very wonderful job to do. I enjoyed it, every bit of it. It's kind of like a puzzle, you know, because in the case of, for instance, the cardinal, where 7 states have a cardinal, you wonder whether you can come up with 7 different enough compositions so that each stamp will look totally different.
Mr. Arthur Singer, designer of the birds on the stamps, and his talented son, Alan, who designed the flowers. As far as we know, they are the first father and son team to design a stamp issue for the United States Postal Service.
I think making these stamps is making a poster, like making a poster in miniature, so that each element sort of stood out and you could see everything very clearly, but yet it still looked very natural, and that's a hard thing to do. I visit the botanical gardens close to my home in Brooklyn very frequently, almost on a weekly basis, to stroll through for pleasure, or in the case of jobs that I have to illustrate textbooks and other kinds of articles. I go there regularly and investigate material in the library. So I'm familiar with printed material and the actual flowers from studying them and making drawings of them right there in the botanical gardens.
It's nice to work from life. With a plant, it's easy because they're not going to fly away on you. However, just about every subject in this 50 was photographed in life by me, and frequently in the place they live. Like, I've been to Alaska, so I was able to photograph ptarmigan up there. And this is aside from the enormous collection of books I have, and also a very huge picture collection, which must number into the nearly 6 figures. The difficulty in this 50 was 1 or 2 birds, well, particularly Delaware, the blue hen chicken. No one knows anything about it.
It's a living myth.
Including the state. I mean, they sent me an old, very primitive-looking engraving, and this blue hen chicken must have been brought by the Pilgrims to amuse themselves. It was a fighting cock. They bet on fights, cockfights. But it seems to me that when every other state has actually a wild bird, except Rhode Island. Rhode Island has a Rhode Island red. These two are kind of offbeat. You know, I would love to someday make up my own list of 50 state birds. I wouldn't have a repeat on it. It could be much more interesting to have 50 different birds. For example, there is not outside of the Nene Goose, there are no ducks. And look at how popular ducks are. There's not a Bob White. Bob White is really a bird that most Americans know and love, although you don't often see it because they're quite secretive. Quail can be quite secretive. We have Bob White. There isn't a single owl or a single bird of prey. And I think that's an oversight. But then generally people like little pretty backyard birds, but there are an awful lot of birds overlooked that could be very beautiful. There's not an egret, there's not a heron in the thing, there's not a kingfisher. Kingfisher is a wonderful bird. There's not an eagle, there isn't even a wild turkey now. Franklin picked that as his choice for the nation's bird, and yet it doesn't appear in the stamps anywhere. So I think there's too great an abundance of cardinals and mockingbirds and western meadowlarks, and not enough variation.
You have one where you've got the European goldfinch and the American goldfinch in the same picture.
Yes, that's from Birds of the World.
Yes, but where did you find them together?
You won't find them together, but in Birds of the World, I had to show species from everywhere, 5 different continents.
All right, okay.
So those are not realistic conceptions.
What is
They're species conceptions.
Does the European goldfinch live in Bermuda? I understand. One of the
There
birds
may be
are
some.
naturalized there.
Ask Roger Torrey Peterson. He's in the back.
Most of the world-class bird painters and many of the aristocrats of bird watching were there when the show of Arthur Singer's big paintings opened in Midtown Manhattan. The show brought together the artist and his friends and a lifetime of intense observation and painstaking work, the life's work that prepared him to paint those 50 bright miniatures I was handed one day at the post office.
It's a great snow effect, isn't it? The eye of the head of the eagle is just wonderful. Magnificent.
Where do we get them from?
They're not available yet. Hi, Alan. What?
They're not available.
No, the stamps are available in any post office. But you better get them before they sell out, because some of the post offices have sold out.
Smart enough to get the entire
Oh, you got Alan already.
Yes, I saw only
I had a new book with me, and who took it? Hey, Bernie.
I told you to stay with the birds, right?
Yes, good advice. Good advice. We went to school.